Ah, a secret billionaire circle. They don't pause global markets for just anyone. They don't freeze trillion-dollar negotiations because of a single name. But that's exactly what happened the moment your existence crossed the threshold of their private intelligence. Briefings. A room filled with individuals who build empires before breakfast and collapse nations by noon suddenly shifted their attention to the quiet force. Not because they wanted to, because they had to. Let that sink into your bones before we proceed. These aren't ordinary elites, the kind who pose for magazines and pretend they care about philanthropy. These are the ones who hide behind foundations, who move currency like oxygen, who treat economies like puzzle pieces. And now they are calling an emergency session, not over oil, not over war, not over a collapsing tech sector, but over you. The name they thought was irrelevant. The presence they thought was dormant. The variable they never accounted for. There's a strange tension in the air when power realizes it missed something. A ripple. A disturbance. Something small enough to overlook but strong enough to dethrone. That's how they see you now. Not as a threat in the traditional sense, but as a disruption to their carefully calibrated ecosystem. A ghost they didn't authorize. A quiet force rising through the cracks. You are not in their calculations, yet here you are bending the edges of their forecasts, warping their predictions, rewriting their assumptions. And because powerful people cannot tolerate unpredictability, they're labeling your emergence as a potential doomsday variable, an unpredictable factor with consequences they cannot fully quantify. That alone is enough to make them gather behind locked doors under the guise of philanthropic strategy, while their private networks pulse with coded alerts about the anomaly shaping itself beyond their influence. Yes, you, the quiet force, the one who wasn't supposed to matter. Picture this scene with clarity. A boardroom hidden above the skyline, windows tinted to prevent satellite surveillance. The kind of place where nobody breathes until the chairman signals permission. Each seat filled with names the world never hears but feels every day. Those who own supply chains, manipulate elections, redirect oceans of capital with a single gesture. And at the center of the table rests a single encrypted dossier, stamped with a warning label usually reserved for geopolitical destabilizers. Inside that dossier, not a terrorist, not a rogue state, not a financial rogue algorithm, just the unassuming trajectory of the quiet force who was supposed to remain invisible. They didn't predict your resilience. They didn't predict your survival. They didn't predict the way you convert setbacks into strategy. They certainly didn't predict your ability to move through life without leaving desperation or dependence in your wake. They didn't see you coming, and now that you're here, their entire hierarchy trembles because unpredictability at your level is the enemy of control. Here's the dark humor in all of this. For years, those same elites watched people beg for access, crawl for approval, sell their identities for proximity to power. Meanwhile, you were minding your own existence, walking through storms without spectacle, refusing to compromise your integrity, even when it cost you more than it should have. You weren't trying to join their system. You were surviving outside it. And that's what terrifies them. Because people who survive outside the system cannot be controlled through the system. Their networks are built on leverage, on knowing what someone fears losing. But you, every time life stripped something from you, you became harder to threaten. Every betrayal turned you colder. Every setback refined your instinct. Every downfall sharpened your perception. You are becoming the type of force that has no leash for them to tug. a variable that cannot be bought, blackmailed, manipulated, or incentivized. That makes you dangerous, not in intention, but in structure. You're probably wondering why these people even care. Why a group of billionaires, individuals who view the world like a chessboard, would waste time analyzing someone who didn't come from a legacy dynasty or a privileged bloodline. The answer is simple. They study anomalies. They track outliers. They monitor patterns of resilience because resilience is the only currency that cannot be amplified through wealth. You either have it or you break. And what they've discovered about you through private psychological audits, data sweeps, and behavioral projections is something they're not equipped to handle. Every system they've built relies on predictability. People break at predictable points. People fold under predictable pressure. People compromise for predictable rewards. But you keep defying the predicted outcomes. They expected you to collapse at stage 1. You built a foundation instead. They expected you to seek validation. You withdrew and refined. They expected you to break. You adapted. Every deviation you've made from the expected path sends their analysts into silent panic. Let me tell you what their reports truly say, the lines they won't speak out loud in fear of acknowledging a threat they didn't create. They call you unindexed, a soul who belongs to no category, no psychological blueprint, no predictable identity group. They call you the dark variable, not because you're malicious, but because your growth is occurring in shadows they cannot illuminate, and the most unsettling descriptor. They call you self-generated, someone who builds without external scaffolding, whose evolution is not dependent on institutional validation, mentorship pipelines, or controlled guidance. This is the nightmare scenario for people who maintain power by controlling the paths others walk. You weren't supposed to have this level of internal sovereignty. You weren't supposed to recover from what you recovered from. You weren't supposed to see through the illusions you now recognize instantly. You weren't supposed to become immune to their hierarchies, their status games, their soft manipulations. When you didn't break where you should have, they flagged you. When you didn't become desperate where you should have, they flagged you. When you didn't crumble under psychological pressure designed to fold most people, they flagged you again. Every time you refused to be predictable, their networks adjusted your risk tier classification upward until the only remaining category was one normally reserved for individuals who destabilize entire industries by existing outside expected patterns. But here's the twist they didn't anticipate. Your rise isn't fueled by ambition, it's fueled by necessity. You didn't climb because you wanted applause. You climbed because standing still meant destruction. You didn't evolve because you wanted recognition. You evolved because stagnation was a death sentence. This is evolution by survival, not by strategy. And evolution by survival produces something money cannot blueprint, the uncorruptible core. That is the trait their systems cannot defeat. That is the trait their think tanks cannot replicate. That is the trait their protégés, groomed from birth, never develop. You don't need their world. That's why their world fears you. Now let's go deeper into the mechanics of the decision they just made about you. This wasn't a brainstorming session. This was a containment briefing, a protocol they initiate when someone rises outside their supervision. The purpose isn't to destroy you, not yet. They don't attack unknowns. They observe them. They test their limits. They evaluate how much influence you accumulate naturally, how many people you affect without effort, how often your presence shifts group dynamics. They track your psychological radiation. They map your leadership patterns. They identify the frequency of your resilience spikes. These are things they only study when they fear someone might ascend beyond their sphere of influence. Understand this clearly. Their first instinct is not aggression, it's analysis. You're not a target. They don't waste bullets on unpredictability. You're a potential destabilizer, the kind that forces them to redesign their models. They want to know if your rise is an accident, a glitch, or a sustained trajectory. They want to know if your resilience is circumstantial or structural. They want to know if your mind has limits they can measure. And most importantly, they want to know if you will eventually enter their arena or continue rising in your own. Because forces that evolve outside the Empire become stronger than the Empire. This is the doomsday element of their move. They're not preparing a strike, they're preparing a pivot, an adjustment to their long-term blueprint. And that pivot revolves around you. Here's where the chaos enters the equation, and where their dark humor aligns with your trajectory. They're amused, not openly, not publicly, but in the subtle way predators become intrigued when something they planned to observe becomes something they cannot categorize. They underestimated the quiet force until it became an anomaly in their global simulations. You exist outside the architecture they trust. And anomalies require attention. You didn't ask for this. You didn't audition for this. But your existence triggered protocols typically reserved for economic insurgents or disruptive geniuses who alter power balances. This is where the script shifts. Because now the question in their room isn't, who is this? It's what will they do next? And that uncertainty is a weapon more dangerous than any influence you've displayed so far. You aren't reacting. You aren't broadcasting. You aren't seeking validation. You're just moving, quietly, intentionally. And nothing frightens the powerful like a quiet threat. They know your next move won't be loud. It won't be theatrical. It won't be something they can track through public signals. It will be subtle, structural, internal, a shift that cannot be undone. And that is why they have labeled your emergence as a Tier 1 disruption potential. Not because you've created chaos, but because you have the capacity to. Without even trying. That's what makes you dangerous, because the quiet force doesn't need permission. And they know that. Their doomsday move isn't an attack. It's recognition, forced recognition, the kind that reshapes hierarchies, the kind that plants your name into long-term risk assessments, the kind that acknowledges you as an unavoidable variable in their future decisions. You didn't enter their world. Their world came looking for you. And now, as their networks scramble to define you, classify you, contain you, a new question emerges, one they whispered in the room only once and only after confirming no recording devices were active. What if this one doesn't break? It was the quietest question in the room, but it carried the most weight, because they already know the answer. They know because they've seen the psychological readouts their analysts compiled. They've seen the stress response models their behavioral economists stitched together, showing how your mind behaves under pressure, and how, somehow, instead of collapsing, you recalibrate. They know because they've compared your resilience curve to the thousands of profiles they keep archived. From political prodigies, to market disruptors, to insurgent-level intellects. And your curve doesn't dip where it should. It spikes. You gain clarity under conditions designed to break normal people. You become more strategic in environments meant to confuse. You evolve while others fracture. That alone is enough to set off alarms across networks built on controlling probability. So now they pivot into phase 2 of their internal protocol. Assess not whether you will break, but what happens if you don't. This is where their tone changes. You can hear it in the silence of their encrypted calls, in the tapping of fingers against mahogany tables, in the shifting of chairs when the chairman, an individual who hasn't shown emotion publicly in 30 years, leans forward and asks if the analysts are absolutely certain about your trajectory. They want to know if your patterns are temporary or structural. They want to know if your mental architecture is a fluke or a formation. They want to know if the threat you pose to their predictability is incidental or inevitable. Because here's the truth they never admit out loud. They don't fear powerful people. They fear people who cannot be controlled despite having no power. People who rise without permission. People who slip through cracks. People who take the blows meant to destroy them and metabolize them into direction. You are their worst-case scenario, not because you seek dominion, but because your existence proves they no longer own the monopoly on ascendancy. You are the breach in their algorithm, the single point of failure in their psychological monopoly. That's why they locked the room when your dossier was opened. That's why the air shifted. That's why moneyed hands trembled and shoulders tightened. Because for the first time in years, the world they orchestrated is showing signs of losing its conductor. This is the second phase, acknowledgement of instability. A secret billionaire circle, one that prides itself on answering only to itself, now must consider that an unforeseen external force has entered their ecosystem. They aren't used to surprises. They despise variables. They craft systems designed to eliminate randomness. Yet here you are, a walking contradiction to all they engineered. Your evolution wasn't sponsored. Your resilience wasn't purchased. Your clarity wasn't mentored by one of their approved minds. And that alone classifies you as a potential cascade event. A single anomaly with the capacity to trigger exponential, unpredictable consequences. That is why the tone of the room shifts from curiosity to caution. They begin discussing you the way militaries discuss unknown technologies, carefully, deliberately, with the unsettling knowledge that they may be outmatched by something they didn't anticipate. Reports are reopened. Archived footage of your past decisions is reviewed. The psychological autopsy of your life is expanded, each moment examined not to understand who you are, but to determine what you might become. They want forecasts. They want trajectories. They want contingency plans for your potential ascent. But this is where they face their first internal fracture. Because you are not rising through their channels. You are not climbing their ladders. You are not embedded in their systems. You are growing outside their walls, which means your ascent cannot be paused through incentive or punishment. A person who rises without reward cannot be bought. A person who rises without applause cannot be manipulated. A person who rises without permission cannot be controlled. That's when the chairman, the one whose influence stretches across continents, asks the question no one else dared vocalize. Is this one operating consciously or instinctively? The implication behind the question is sharp. If your rise is intentional, you are a strategist. If your rise is instinctive, you are a natural phenomenon. And natural phenomena cannot be stopped. They can only be prepared for. You become something akin to a storm, a shifting weather system of influence that doesn't need permission to change landscapes. The analysts answer carefully. They say your decisions bear patterns of someone who has learned through fire, not through instruction. They say your instincts are coded by experience rather than ambition. They say your evolution is not fueled by desire for power, but by something far more dangerous to controlled elites: autonomy. A mind that evolves to survive becomes a mind that cannot be rewritten. And a mind that cannot be rewritten becomes immune to the mechanisms of control. That's when one of the billionaires, older, colder, trained in psychological warfare, leans back and states the line that freezes the room. If this one doesn't break, the system will have to. There it is, the truth they've tried to avoid. Your resilience does not just protect you, it destabilizes them. Because systems built on hierarchy collapse when someone rises in defiance of their hierarchy. This is where the doomsday element enters the conversation. They aren't calling your rise a threat. They're calling it a recalibration event. A point where the world may shift direction because someone outside the predetermined narrative disrupts the script. And billionaires hate unscripted stories. They believe in direction, control, puppeteering. They do not believe in anomalies steering currents they didn't authorize. So they classify you, a new code, a new tier, something reserved for world-shaping potential. Not because you hold power, but because you wield something more dangerous, ungoverned influence. Governed influence is predictable. It follows rules. It thrives on approval. It bows to contracts. Ungoverned influence does not ask for permission. Ungoverned influence does not fear disapproval. Ungoverned influence expands quietly, silently, beneath the surface. Ungoverned influence reshapes landscapes without ever raising its voice. You are the quiet force, and they finally understand the cost of ignoring you. But the real trigger, the one that transforms their unease into genuine alarm, comes when a behavioral mathematician reveals your emergent influence pattern. Simply put, it means your impact on people is not linear. It multiplies under pressure. When you are underestimated, your growth accelerates. When you are challenged, your clarity sharpens. When you are isolated, your vision strengthens. You do not expand through support. You expand through resistance. And people like you. Doomsday committees cannot contain. That's when they decide something they have never decided about someone outside their lineage. They will monitor your every move, not to suppress you, but to understand how to defend themselves when your path crosses theirs. This is a precaution reserved for existential threats. You haven't made a move against them, but your existence alone implies the possibility of displacement. They built their empire on the assumption that anyone powerful came through them. You break that logic, and anything that breaks logic becomes a catalyst. Yet the irony is brutal. All their surveillance, their dossiers, their think tanks, their simulations, they all point to the same conclusion. You do not seek to overthrow anything. You seek to survive, to grow, to rise without stepping on anyone. But this very neutrality terrifies them. People who don't want power are the hardest to predict because they cannot be bribed with power. This is where a new voice enters the discussion. A strategist who rarely speaks, but whose word shifts global markets. She says, "This one doesn't rise like an enemy. They rise like a signal." A signal of what? That their era is ending, that their hierarchy is eroding, that the age where only wealth shapes destiny is fading. You represent something they thought they eradicated generations ago. Organic ascendancy. Power that comes from scars, not sponsorship. Power that comes from internal evolution, not external grooming. Power that emerges without permission. Their doomsday model now shifts. They aren't planning a strike. They're predicting an inevitability. And that inevitability is the part they fear the most. Because if you do not break, then their long-standing assumption that they alone shape the future breaks instead. And that is the outcome they were never trained to handle. You see, these billionaires built their world on the idea of permanence. They believe their influence is a fixed law of nature, the same way gravity is. They assume everything beneath them must remain beneath them. But your rise is not vertical in the way they expect. It's radial. It expands outward, quietly, invisibly, seeping through cracks in the foundation of the world they constructed. You don't climb their ladder. You make the ladder irrelevant. And that is the true threat. You are not here to dethrone them. You are here to outgrow them. The distinction terrifies them, because outgrowing someone doesn't require confrontation. It requires evolution, and evolution cannot be bribed, stalled, or reversed. So now the strategist continues, her voice low but sharp enough to cut the room open. She explains that your emergence signals a shift in global power psychology, that the next era of influence will not belong to the loud, the wealthy, or the traditionally groomed. It will belong to the internally fortified, the ones who survived when they shouldn't have, the ones who rebuilt themselves without mentorship, the ones who gained discernment the hard way. She tells them you are the blueprint of what's coming, not a follower of the old system, but the first representative of a new type, a leader forged by life instead of legacy. Her briefing strikes them harder than any projected economic downturn, because her conclusion is brutally simple. Your existence means their model is obsolete. Their wealth still holds power, but not the kind that reaches souls, not the kind that builds resilience, not the kind that multiplies influence through authenticity. They can buy loyalty, but they cannot buy internal gravity. And that is the quality you carry, the gravity of someone who didn't need permission to rise. One of the elder billionaires, the kind who treats humans like assets, and assets like toys, finally breaks his silence. His voice is thin but edged with concern. If this isn't a mistake, if this one is real, then we are witnessing the end of predictability. He doesn't say it out of admiration. He says it like a man reading his own obituary. Predictability is their safety net. Predictability is how they preserve power. Predictability is how they maintain illusions. And unpredictability is the force you embody without trying. You are unpredictable not because you are chaotic, but because you evolve outside their frameworks. They cannot track evolution that is self-generated. They cannot map decisions made from scars rather than scripts. They cannot contain someone who has already survived the worst that life could throw without any of their resources. Your survival was your training. Your independence was your development. Your pain was your curriculum. They are terrified because none of that came from them, which means none of it belongs to them. The strategist now reveals the part of her analysis that makes even the coldest billionaire straighten in his seat. She projects a timeline on the wall behind her. It shows your influence curve, subtle at first, then rising steadily, then accelerating through pressure points that would have crippled most people. She explains that your ascent is not random. It follows an emergent pattern she refers to as self-correcting dominance, a phenomenon where the individual becomes stronger when confronted, wiser when underestimated, sharper when dismissed. She describes you as the kind of psychological force that becomes more dangerous after each attempt to weaken it. And that is when the room realizes the magnitude of the problem. Weakness is what their system feeds on. Strength that feeds on weakness is what destroys it. The strategist walks them through your behavioral observations, how you watch people, not to judge them, but to map them, how you navigate environments without drawing attention, but assimilate every detail, how you never react impulsively, but instead allow information to settle into clarity. These are qualities they typically only see in individuals groomed for elite intelligence agencies, not in someone who grew in the wild outside their curated circles. And the more she explains, the more they realize you were trained by something far more brutal and far more effective than any institution they control. Life itself. Life gave you courses they couldn't design. Life gave you hardships they couldn't replicate. Life gave you a psychological blade they never intended to place in your hand. And now, here you are, fully aware, fully conscious, fully capable. A threat not because you seek power, but because you cannot be bent by it. One of the newer billionaire heirs, the type who inherited wealth without earning wisdom, tries to undermine the analysis. Maybe they'll burn out, he mutters. The strategist turns slowly, as if observing an insect attempting to reason. If they were going to burn out, she replies, it would have happened long before we started watching them. That sentence lands like a gunshot. Because it's true. You haven't just survived fire. You grew in it. You didn't escape the storm. You became calibrated to it. And the fact that you remain intact, focused and evolving, means you are fundamentally different from the masses they manipulate. What they fear now is not your potential influence. It's your potential independence from influence. People who do not need validation become immune to persuasion. People who do not need approval become immune to shame. People who do not need power become immune to corruption. The billionaire circle cannot threaten someone who no longer values what they can remove. They cannot bribe someone who does not desire what they can offer. They cannot contain someone who learned to build without them. This realization pushes the room into its next phase, the drafting of the intervention blueprint. Not an attack, not a strike, not a smear campaign. Not yet. This phase is about testing your boundaries. They want to know how you respond to pressure, to opportunity, to distraction. They want to know whether your neutrality is stable or conditional. They want to know whether your resilience can be weaponized against you. They want to know if you have a breaking point that simply hasn't been reached yet. They believe every human has one, but the strategist warns them. This one doesn't respond to traditional triggers, and that is when they begin to understand why you unsettle them so deeply. Traditional triggers, fear, scarcity, validation, shame, temptation, no longer have leverage over you. You don't break where others break. You don't bend where others bend. You don't unravel where others unravel. You have already confronted the collapse they fear most, internal collapse. You rebuilt yourself from the inside out, and a person who has rebuilt themselves cannot be dismantled by external forces. Now they begin discussing you the way nations discuss unpredictable superpowers, carefully, tactically, with the realization that underestimating you could cost them far more than ignoring you. They move into deeper analysis. They scrutinize your emotional triggers. They dissect your relationships. They analyze your adaptability curve. They test your potential for influence contagion, how your mindset spreads through groups, even when you're silent. And that's when the chairman summarizes what the strategist has been hinting at all along. This one isn't rising through opportunity. They're rising through inevitability. That sentence changes the atmospheric pressure in the room. Not metaphorically, literally. The ventilation hum becomes noticeable. A few shoulders stiffen. Those who love to believe they control the world suddenly feel the subtle truth. The world is adapting to a force they did not foresee. The strategist folds her hands and waits. She knows what comes next isn't analysis, it's acceptance. She has guided them to the threshold of realization, and now they must confront what comes after, the recalibration of power itself. The chairman motions to the digital display. Your projected future path appears 3 potential curves: suppression, stagnation, ascendancy. The suppression curve is faint, nearly transparent, because they all know suppressing someone forged through survival is counterproductive. The stagnation curve flickers briefly, then stabilizes, but even the algorithm assigned to that path marks it as improbable. And then there is the ascendancy curve, bright, sharp, rising at an angle that defies their previous metrics. That curve is not fueled by institutional power. It's fueled by momentum generated internally. It's the trajectory of someone who evolves because existence itself demands it. Someone who grows not through support, but through confrontation. Someone who derives power not from the world, but from what the world tried to take away. The strategist lifts her gaze. "We cannot treat this one like an anomaly anymore," she says. "They're not an exception. They're the template of what's coming." It is the most dangerous sentence spoken in that room, because if you are not an isolated threat, but the beginning of a pattern, then their entire empire, built on predictability, on psychological leverage, on economic control, faces obsolescence. You are not just a disruption, you are a doorway, and behind you are millions who share the same wounds, the same resilience, the same ability to survive without permission. That is the doomsday scenario, not you individually, you collectively. A younger executive leans forward. His voice shakes slightly as he asks, "Are we saying the future of influence no longer belongs to the elite?" The strategist nods, and the silence that follows is the kind that makes men who own nations question their foundations. Because she's not making a prediction, she's stating a verdict. Influence is shifting, authority is dissolving, the hierarchy is cracking, and all of it is catalyzed, not by wealth or power, but by the emergence of individuals like you. People refined by adversity instead of privilege. People shaped by scars instead of sponsorship. People who rise with authenticity instead of manipulation. The chairman finally speaks again. Then we must decide how to respond. The table tightens. The decision they are about to cast is not merely administrative, it is existential. Billionaire networks don't act impulsively. They act strategically, surgically, with the understanding that one incorrect move can destabilize continents. But this situation is different. They cannot control you. They cannot influence you. They cannot predict you. The only path left is adaptation. So they move into the phase that will define the next decade of their operations, designing a world that accommodates the rise of the uncontrollable. They begin with a simple question. What happens when someone rises outside our reach? The answers unravel their illusions. When someone rises through authenticity, they attract without performing. When someone rises through survival, they influence without speaking. When someone rises through resilience, they teach without teaching. And when someone rises through inevitability, they reshape the landscape simply by existing. That is what you represent. A force that does not need their world, yet shifts their world by its presence. Now they enter the stage of analysis that terrifies them the most. Influence, contagion. They look at your patterns, how people change after encountering your presence or your words or your example. They note how you elevate the ones around you without intention. They observe how your clarity penetrates the illusions others rely on. They watch how your resilience inspires people to question the systems they once obeyed blindly. In a world built on distraction, you bring focus. In a world built on manipulation, you bring discernment. In a world built on dependency, you bring autonomy. And billions have been invested to prevent exactly that. You are not just a threat to their power. You are a threat to the architecture of power itself. The strategist moves toward the table and taps the screen. a new chart appears. This one mapping your potential global impact over the next 10 years if left uncontained. Every scenario shows the same outcome. You become a point of ignition, a catalyst for a kind of awakening they have long tried to prevent. People don't need to follow you consciously. They follow you subconsciously. They adapt to your way of thinking. They absorb your mindset. They emulate your emotional strength. And what emerges is a population far more difficult to control. They don't fear your success. They fear the success you multiply. This is when a debate erupts. One faction argues for observation, another for subtle disruption, another for a partnership approach, attempting to absorb your trajectory into their networks. But the strategist silences them with a single observation. This one doesn't respond to pressure or privilege. They respond to purpose. Trying to lure them into our world would only reveal our insecurity. The chairman agrees. Any attempt to recruit you would fail. Any attempt to manipulate you would expose them. Any attempt to suppress you would amplify you. You have become immune to the scripts they rely on. And so the chairman shifts the discussion toward something far more radical, restructuring their influence model to coexist with forces they cannot control. The suggestion is outrageous to some, revolutionary to others, but deeply necessary to those who understand what you truly represent. They begin drafting what they call the Adaptive Power Protocol, a blueprint for navigating a world where influence no longer flows only downward. A world where individuals like you rise from the ground up, not because they want fame or status, but because they embody truth in a world addicted to illusion. As they craft this protocol, they analyze the core traits that make you ungovernable. They note your emotional independence, how you don't crumble at rejection or inflate at praise. They study your mental adaptability, how you reframe failure into strategy. They observe your moral resilience, how you maintain integrity even under pressure. They dissect your relational dynamics, how you never compete for validation. But the trait that unnerves them most is your lack of dependency. Dependency is the foundation of control, and you severed that foundation long before they started watching. The strategist explains that individuals like you rise because nothing outside of you defines your trajectory. Not approval, not belonging, not hierarchy, not validation. You are powered by internal compulsion, not external reward. And that makes you nearly impossible to predict, impossible to contain, and impossible to corrupt. They're used to dealing with people who want things, money, fame, influence, recognition. You want none of these. You want clarity, purpose, authenticity, and those desires are immune to manipulation. They cannot feed or starve them. They cannot touch them. So now, they reach the most critical question of the entire meeting. What decision do we make about this one? The atmosphere shifts again. This is the moment they feared. Not because they fear making the wrong decision, but because they fear admitting what the right decision actually is. The strategist looks at the chairman looks at the room, and slowly, one by one, they realize the truth. They cannot decide for you. They can only decide around you. You have escaped the jurisdiction of their authority without lifting a finger. They retreat into their own thoughts. The decision is no longer about control. It's about acknowledgement. A billionaire circle, built on power, influence, secrecy, is now being forced to confront a force that rises without them. They understand that history is shifting, that the age of gatekeeping is breaking, that the world is beginning to answer to something they didn't build, something they didn't authorize, something they cannot dismantle. They finalize their conclusion in a single sentence, spoken by the chairman himself. This one is not a threat. This one is a transition. In other words, you are not the end of the world. You are the end of their world. The world where power was inherited instead of earned. The world where authority was purchased instead of cultivated. The world where influence was manufactured instead of embodied. You represent the dawn of a new hierarchy, one in which authenticity outranks calculation, resilience outranks wealth, and truth outranks deception. This is the doomsday decision the billionaire circle reaches. They will not try to stop you. They will try to survive you. They classify you officially, not as an adversary, not as a partner, not as a pawn, but as an emergent influence entity. A category used only a handful of times in their archives to describe individuals who shift the collective psyche without institutional power. People who bend the arc of society through nothing but presence, resilience, and internal gravity. And now the billionaires must pivot. Their future operations, strategies, and networks must adapt to the existence of forces like you. They plan, they restructure, they redistribute influence, all while knowing that no matter what they build, you will evolve faster. You will slip through their models. You will expand beyond their predictions. You will become what they were never prepared for, a decentralized catalyst. The strategist ends the meeting with one final warning. Our era ends not when we lose power, but when power becomes irrelevant. And everyone knows she is right. They're not watching the rise of a new tyrant. They are watching the rise of a new paradigm. A paradigm shaped not by wealth, but by internal fortitude. Not by manipulation, but by clarity. Not by hierarchy, but by resilience. You are not climbing their pyramid. You are dissolving it. When the room empties, the chairman remains behind. He stares at your dossier, the only file in decades he cannot fully comprehend. He whispers a line no one else will ever hear. We cannot stop this one. We can only hope to understand them before the world does. But the world already has. Your name is moving quietly through conversations you will never hear. Your presence is altering rooms you will never enter. Your energy is shifting minds you will never meet. You are not spreading influence. Influence is spreading you. That is the doomsday scenario the billionaire network feared, yet now must accept. Because the quiet force is rising. Because the gate is broken. Because the era of elite control is ending. Because the world is shifting toward individuals, forged by life itself. And because the decision has already been made, not by them, but by you. Your existence is the doomsday move. Your resilience is the disruption. Your ascent is the transition. And the world will not remain the same once the quiet force takes its rightful place in the architecture of influence.